Hi, good evening, and welcome to Densura and Friends, our latest episode. And I am delighted to have with me Mr. Chris Barrow. And there's a reason that I think there are a couple of hundred people, hopefully, in the waiting room or watching now, because Chris, for those who don't know him, has been at this game for quite some time. I think over a quarter of a century, he's been consulting and coaching the dental profession. And Chris, I'm particularly grateful to you for joining us this evening, because I know you're getting over quite a nasty bout of COVID, which is not that uncommon, but no one wishes it on anybody. So good to see you back in good health. I hope your voice holds out.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Looking forward to it.
Good. And if it's probably a completely inappropriate segue, but I'm going to use it anyway. But in COVID times, or just post-COVID, the dental profession went through sheer hell with everything happened with COVID. Since that time, they've had a real uptick in the number of patients for reasons that we all understand. But with the economy being where it is, and Rishi Sunak standing up the other day, a bit of doom and gloom, things are not looking so rosy going into the future. So I'm sort of hoping, if I've got this right, that this evening you're going to be able to help us out a little bit.
Hoping so, Kevin, and I know that we've got a crowd gathering at the moment, so I don't want to launch into too much of the material until we've kind of got the audience in the room. But I am going to kind of preface my comments by saying that it's rather ironic that during February and March I was running my own client workshops. Yeah. And one of the things that I was saying very, very forcefully is that it sounds ironic even now that I'm saying it. My announcement in February and March is that it's time to stop firefighting and it's time to get back to strategy and tactics and planning again. And little did I know when I made those comments in February and March that two things that were going to happen. The first thing was that COVID, of course, was going to reappear as being a major factor in all of our day-to-day lives, even though it may not be appearing in the news media anymore. We all know that COVID cases are at record levels, and we all know that that's causing disruption to a lot of people's dental practices on a day-to-day basis. So we're back into COVID, as somebody once called it, in terms of dealing with the effects of isolation and positive testing. And then at the same time, and of course, it's the reason that we're here this evening, then at the very, very same time, we get this thing that the media have decided to christen as the cost of living crisis thrown into the mix. And so when we were discussing what would be relevant and contemporary insofar as this evening's webinar is concerned, it seemed appropriate to face that issue head on. Because, of course, what is happening is that the media are now feeding us a daily diet of cost of living crisis. And as you say, we've even obviously now had a spring budget, which has also addressed that issue as well. So it's right in the forefront of everybody's minds. And yes, I've just had a week off work with COVID, and yes, I'm getting better slowly but surely. Thank you very much indeed. But it's been really interesting catching up with my client emails, even today, because today's been my first proper day back at work for about 10 days. I've been catching up on client emails, and there is a constant reference in those emails to worrying about whether this cost of living crisis is going to affect business, worrying whether this cost of living crisis should delay the implementation of any price rises that might be due at the moment, worrying whether this cost of living crisis is going to impact on the existing recruitment and retention and remuneration crisis that we're dealing with in the industry. And then ultimately, I've had a number of emails from people today saying, I'm really worried about the prognosis for the rest of 2022. And I've been thinking about extending the practice. I've been thinking about refurbishing. I've been thinking about buying, investing in new equipment, and I'm wondering whether it's the right time to do it. Yeah. Or, as one client said to me today, do I take the view that cash is king? Do I take the view that I should stop spending, that I should stop investing, and that I should be squirreling away my cash in order to get through what this cost of living crisis is going to mean to us all? So that's the background to all of this. And if it's all right with you, Kevin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop into screen share, and I'm going to share some slides. So for the people that are on the call, can I say, by the way, that for those of you that have joined us this evening, first of all, a huge big thank you for joining us on a relatively sunny Monday evening in Manchester. I don't know what it's like wherever you are, but we have an uncharacteristically balmy evening.
Yeah, not in London.
Okay, so rather than, maybe you are sat round your chimney watching, listening to this, who knows? But I really, really appreciate you taking the time out to join us. And can I also say that we have the chat box open on Zoom here, and I'm more than happy to take questions as we go through this presentation. So please, if I don't explain myself properly, stop me, drop me a line in chat and say, can you run that past me again? If you want to challenge anything I say, please do so in the chat box. And if you've got any specific questions, do so there as well. But without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into my screen share, and I'm going to hit my presentation button. And Kevin, hopefully you'll just give me a thumbs up there that you can see my opening slide there, which is the much vaunted postponement graphic that we did. Let me just open my chat box and have it over there on my screen so that I can just see if anybody does post any questions. So the chat box is open if anybody does want to post anything in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on with the show. So let's talk about this cost of living crisis that we're all dealing with right now. And let's talk about how, if at all, we need to adjust our marketing in order to deal with this perceived cost of living crisis. So first thing I want to do is I want to face the reality of what it is that people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Now, first of all, personally speaking, I got the email from my utility provider up here in Manchester, which is E.ON, who provide me with my gas and my electric. And they wrote to me last week, and they told me that my existing direct debit, because I pay for my utility bills on a monthly basis, my existing direct debit is going to be increased by 56% on the 1st of April. And by the way, I posted that into Facebook last week, and it produced a very, very interesting series of comments from Facebook friends who were sharing similar numbers, some of which actually were considerably higher than the 56% increase that I'm facing here in the Northwest. There's some people that have had utility bill increases even higher than that. I took my car to the gas station last week, and I kind of stood there watching the pump going round and round and round. And eventually I got to the stage where it was like, when is this going to end? Now, can I just say, for purposes of comparison, I drive a Mini. Now, you don't expect a Mini to be something that's going to take a long time to fill at the pump. But let me tell you, I was just standing there watching the meter going round and round and round and wondering whether it was ever going to finish. And of course, I also use public transport for some of my travel. And I'm already beginning to realize that some of the train and aeroplane tickets that I've been used to over the years are suddenly taking on a rapidly new look. And can I show you, by the way, tonight, frequent stops for drinks of Pepsi Max because I'm still coming out of the back end of COVID, so I've still got a sore throat. But I'll share with you a fantastic story. I was due to go down to Showcase, as you know, Kevin, last week, and couldn't make it because of the COVID. But I've got to tell you, I had a really interesting dialogue with Philippa Goodwin, who was trying to organise my train ticket down there. Now, I've reached a certain stage in my life where I do actually like travelling first class from Stockport to Euston. You know, I feel as I've achieved that level of seniority in the world. And it was Philippa politely pointing out to me that if I wanted to go to Euston from Stockport first class at the time of day I'd chosen, which was a midweek, mid-afternoon train, with a return journey on the Saturday evening, my first class ticket was going to cost me £848.
Wow.
And I have to say, the prospect of flying to New York for the weekend was possibly more attractive than going from Stockport to Euston. But in all fairness, we didn't end up paying that because we shopped around for something that came out a lot cheaper. But Avanti have actually got the audacity to post that price on their online booking system. But what we see on the screen here is actually a series of screenshots which I stole from the Guardian newspaper. And these appeared in an article that was published by the Guardian. I think it was on Friday morning, actually, last week, where they were just doing a kind of a round robin of some of the service and commodity price increases that we are seeing out there in the market at the moment. And I'll leave it for you to digest. By the way, Kevin, I will be sending copies of these slides through to Densura at the end of the evening so that you can distribute those copies to all the people who have registered for the webinar. So there's a little summary of what our patients are seeing in the media on a day-to-day basis, as well, of course, as experiencing the very same when they go out and buy things themselves. And I thought that it was interesting to take a look at the historical record of inflation, to take a look at what is actually going on. And this, by the way, like every good consultant, I'm going to start this evening with all the bad news. We'll get the bad news out of the way, and then what we'll do is we'll get on to the good news in the second stage of the presentation. So prepare to be depressed for a few minutes, because we're going to have to go there first so that we can knock everybody down, but then we can build them back up again before the end of this evening's presentation. So let's have a look. There you've got the history of the Consumer Price Index in the UK, right the way through from the back end of 1989. What's interesting about that is that inflation is heading over 6% for the first time in 30 years. 1992 was the last time we saw inflation at those levels. And what fascinates me about that is that it means that around 2/3 of the current UK workforce, let's say 2/3 of our patients in a job, have never experienced an inflationary economy any higher than about 5%. Mm. And even when we've hit those two heights, one of them was temporarily during the banking collapse of 2008, which you can see there. And the other one was temporarily, again, back in 2012, still 10 years ago. And so actually, people, 2/3 of the workforce can be forgiven for having absolutely no memory of what it's like to live in a higher inflation environment. And before I comment on that, I'm going to share with you an even more interesting and similar graph, because if we now actually go back to 1948 as being our means of measurement, it gives me the opportunity of being the grumpy old man and saying that I was there in 1976 during the 3-day week and the oil crisis, 73, 76, when inflation was actually running temporarily around 27% a year. I was there in the early 80s when inflation temporarily hit over 20%, and some of the older listeners might remember the mortgage interest rate in this country temporarily hitting 19% for a period of time. But actually, when we talk about double-digit inflation, then in actual fact, around 85% of people currently in a job in the UK have never had any experience of double-digit inflation. In fact, it's only old codgers like me that have got any memory of what that was like. I had a mortgage in 1979, and my mortgage interest rate went to 19%. And fortunately, it was very temporary because some very, very violent actions were taken in order to rectify the economy. Some of the older people on the call might remember Britain leaving the International Monetary Fund as a means of trying to reduce inflation. But we have seen this before. And before we get onto the subject of marketing, I'm just going to say something about those people who are working for you right now, that's your team members, who are knocking on your door and saying, I need a pay rise because my gas bill and my utility bills and my food bills and my energy bills and every other bill, because my bills are going up, I need a pay rise and I need it now. And again, I'm getting emails from a client saying that they've got team members knocking on the door who had a pay rise in January and are now saying we're going to need to revisit that pay rise because my cost of living has suddenly shot up. So I know it's not the brief for tonight, but can I just make a point that one of the things that we might need to be considering is the need to re-educate our team members to the extent that real-time pay reviews are not a viable economic model. You can't knock on the boss's door every time your gas bill goes up and say, can I have this month's pay rise? It doesn't work like that.
But it does, Chris, just to jump in, it does also, and it probably is a subject for another night, lead to the discussion around what else can you offer staff other than money. And it's about creating an environment they want to work in and culture and everything else. But as I say, probably too much for one evening.
We can't do it tonight, but do you know what? Maybe a future Densura webinar, we can talk about how the hell you're going to deal with the cost of living crisis insofar as it affects your team members, because it, again, is an issue which is very hot to trot. But let's get back to the subject at hand, because we need to talk about marketing tonight. By the way, let's talk about recessions. And this time I'm going to take you back to the year 1701. Now, I have to say I wasn't there personally. But it's interesting to look at the economic record over the last 300 years or so, and to actually just remind ourselves that there's nothing really very new out there. And in actual fact, the only thing that I do is that I look at the last four recessions, which you can see from the graph there, took place in the 70s, the early 80s, the mid-90s, and of course, then the banking collapse. And the next recession I live through will be my fifth. But let me tell you that they just come and go. And the reason I want to share that information is to reassure people of two very, very simple facts. And they are that, number one, when things are going up, they never go up forever. And number two, when things are going down, they never go down forever. However, the media don't think that that sells stories. And so what the media want to do is that they want to say that when things are going to go up, they're going to go up forever. And when things go down, they're going to go down forever. And that, in a sense, is the media trap that we're caught in at the moment, because the news is about things going up in price forever. And we're all going to die as a result. And we've got to burst that bubble. One of the organisations that's already burst that bubble for us has been the Office for Budget Research, who have actually already produced numerous statistical analyses to say that the current increase in inflation is going to be a short-term blip, and that the expectation is that that inflation rate will fall back to much more manageable figures in 2023 and beyond. And so, notwithstanding the geopolitical environment that we're all living in at the moment, notwithstanding the fact that our energy resources are being redistributed around the world very rapidly at the moment because of the geopolitical situation, notwithstanding the fact that we've got rising prices, the reality is that this is just another blip on the graph. That graph that we just looked at, which has been going on much the same for the last 300 years, is another blip. And what we've got to do is that we've got to get ourselves, our team members, and our patients through that blip and out the other side. The bad news is you can't steal the last 10 minutes of my presentation and show it to every patient before you sell them a dental treatment plan, because they're going to think you've lost your mind anyway. So what we've got to do is we've got to do some other things that are going to make sure that the business keeps coming in whilst we get through this blip. So that's what I want to focus on. I want to get away from the media hype, and I want to focus on the things that we need to do in order to make sure that our patients keep coming in through the door and keep buying things from us. By the way, and as a final statistical aside, no more graphs after this one, it is interesting to note that the current level of consumer confidence is not as bad as it was at the outbreak of COVID, but perhaps more importantly, it's significantly not as bad as it was during the last banking crisis in 2008 to 2010. And I know, and I also actually know that there are people on this call this evening that opened dental practices in the middle of the 2008 banking collapse and have survived and have thrived and have prospered. So I just want to contextualize this conversation, which is that we have evidence that people were able to survive, thrive, and prosper during a level of consumer confidence in 2008 to 2012, which was significantly lower than the level of consumer confidence that we have right now. So the history books show us that we can get through this. And we've got to ask ourselves a question: those practices that survived and thrived in 2008 to 2012, what were they doing? And what can we learn from that in terms of what we do going forward? So that's the bad news done. And what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the good news. Again, I will repeat to my audience, if anybody's got any questions, by all means use the chat box. I will be more than happy to answer those questions as we go along. Those of you that know me will know my motto that silence is always interpreted as complete and utter satisfaction. Let us move forward. So let's talk about solutions. And what I'm going to do is to share with you 10 top tips for your marketing in the current cost of living crisis. And a bit like a hit parade, I'm quite fond of hit parades. And those of you that have seen me at any of the dental shows recently will know that I've been doing a top 10 hit parade of the 10 habits of Champions League dental practices. Well, don't worry, this is a different list because we've got some new stuff in here. And I'm going to give you in reverse order. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, 1 being the bestest. I'm going to give you 10 great ideas to keep your marketing going. So let's start in position number 10 in Chris Barrow's hit parade. What is the best thing to do? And the first thing that I'm going to say to you is that I think that it's absolutely essential right now to make sure that what you already offer to your patient base is actually worth turning up for. So what do I mean by that? Well, in these slides, I've shared with you 3 documents. that we use within my own client base. And by the way, those of you that are on this webinar tonight, when you get the link to the slides from Densura, you'll be able to download these documents as PDFs direct from the slide deck. So let's have a look at 3 ideas to make sure that what you offer at the moment is worth turning up for. The first one is to have either a recall letter or a recall email that actually makes turning up for your 6-monthly dental review worth it. And what I mean by that is that we've got, in the current climate, when people are feeling as if their belts need to be tightened, it's never been more important to sell the benefits of regular attendance at the dental practice, whether that's as a plan patient or as a fee per item patient. I'll tell you now from long experience that the first thing that will start crumbling if people start feeling that they are under pressure financially is that their hygiene visit will become an option and not a necessity. And particularly if they've been used to paying for that hygiene visit on a fee per item basis, they're going to look at that 65, 75, 85 pound hygiene visit, and they're going to say, you know what, maybe I'll just give it a miss this time and I'll pick up in 6 or 12 months' time when things are a little bit more confident from a financial point of view. So it's absolutely essential that your recall system right now is being interrogated to make sure that whether you send out letters, emails, or any other kind of digital messaging, that within that messaging, you are selling the benefits of attendance. And what we've got in here is, in the slide deck, an example of an adult recall letter that you will be able to use and adapt to your own circumstances. Point number 2 here is that when they do arrive in the practice, whether it's for a hygiene visit or a dental health review, we've got to then deliver an extraordinary level, not just of customer service, but we've also got to deliver an extraordinary level of clinical care. And so I'm going to leave with you again in the slide deck here 2 examples. One of them, I am indebted to my very good friend and now retired dental business coach, Sheila Scott, who shared with us this 16-point dental health review. And I share with you, with Sheila's permission, which is a traffic light system that can be used with a patient at their dental health review in order to engage the patient in the process of maintaining their oral health. And the third document I have here, again with permission, is from my very good friend and client Neil Harris at HRS Dental Care in Stroud in Gloucestershire, who has shared with us his healthy mouth review checklist. Now, when you download this, you'll see that it's a multiple page document. And again, it's a track to run on in order to deliver service. Just bear with me one moment, because I'm briefly going to mute myself whilst I have a COVID cough. Just bear with me 1 second. I'll be back. Okay, let's keep going. I wonder how long this voice is going to carry on for. So step 10 is make sure that what you're delivering is worth the effort of turning up. It's never been more important to sell the benefits of regular attendance at the practice. On my hit parade, let's go for number 9. Number 9, and again, this is an example that you can download, is to send an amnesty letter to all of those patients who may have been inactive or less active during the last 2 years. And this is a wording that has been tried and tested by my clients over the years. And again, I'm not going to read it out to you like a school teacher. You can download a copy. But in simple terms, it says this: we notice that you've not visited us for a while. You might be anxious about the pandemic, but you might just have been putting it off for a while to come and see us. So let me reassure you of three things. Number one, if you come back to us, we are safe. We are following the appropriate guidelines to protect you from the effects of the pandemic. Number two, we're not going to shout at you for not having been back. Number three, we're not going to hurt you. And number four, we're not going to deliver you with any big bills out of the blue. So the objective of this amnesty letter is to reassure patients who have become inactive or less active that it's okay to visit your dental practice. And I've had examples of these amnesty letters going out. And by the way, I'm not going to tell you that, 80% of the people that get them say, oh my God, thanks for letting me know, can I book an appointment? Actually, not at all. It might be 5% of the patients that you write to who will be responding to this amnesty letter, but it'll be 5% more than you would have got had you not done anything. And I think now is a great time to be sending out amnesty letters to inactive patients. So let's go to tip number 8. Prices are an issue. And so again, with the cooperation and the willingness of a wonderful guy called Bob Seymour, who works at a practice called Natural Smiles in Bristol, I share with you a fair pricing policy. And this is a document that it is now right to share with your patients. And again, when you download this for yourself, it's a multi-page document which explains, number one, how you calculate your prices in a fair way. Number two, how you communicate those prices in a fair way. And number three, the options that you have available for your patients to be able to save money on their dental treatment, either by regular membership of a dental plan or alternatively by taking patient finance options in order to spread the cost of treatment. So again, we've been using this fair pricing policy across my client base to very, very useful effect in order to either introduce price increases. And by the way, most of my clients have introduced price increases around 15% since the beginning of the year. And also to explain the background to those price increases as well. Let's go to number 7 on my hit parade. And number 7 is to make sure that marketing is back on your agenda. You see, the last 2 years, there have been lots and lots of reasons and excuses for kind of falling off the tracks as far as marketing is concerned. First of all, we had a lockdown. Secondly, we had a return to work phase. Thirdly, we've had multiple mini lockdowns. And fourthly, of course, and perhaps most importantly of all, for the last 18 months, it's been raining patients in unprecedented numbers in dentistry. And so a lot of people have just taken the opportunity to say, do you know what? We don't need to do any marketing anymore. We've got all these patients queuing up. We've got a waiting list for appointments. We can't fit the people in that we've already got. Why the hell do we need to talk about marketing? Well, now you do. Now you do, because you're in competition with Rishi Sunak and you're in competition with the media who want to tell your patients that visiting your practice is going to be an unnecessary expense. So we've got to go back to basics. And on this mind map, I share with you my 7 most important steps in effective marketing. And again, rattling through these at a rate of knots. Number 1, I've already covered: revisit your recall system. Number 2, responsibly use social media channels in order to make your communities aware of patient stories, of the difference that you've made to the lives of real patients. Number 3, make sure your website is earning a living by incorporating the very latest winning techniques insofar as website design. Make sure that your websites are full of video patient stories. Make sure that people can download free guides from your website, and make sure that people can communicate with you digitally out of office hours from your website as well. At step 4, make sure that you write a regular blog in which you share longer stories of the difference that you've made to real patients' lives. And make sure also at step 5 that you issue a regular monthly email newsletter to your patients, telling them again about patient stories, about team stories, and occasionally specific products or services that you offer. And if you have historically encouraged referrals from other GDPs into your practice, then now is the time to press the pedal to the metal again on your GDP study club. It's time to get those study club meetings back out of mothballs, and it's time to start bringing those GDPs together face-to-face as well as virtually in order to hear the clinical lectures that you used to deliver to them pre-COVID. Step 6, make sure that at your morning huddle, you are reviewing your day list in order to identify any upselling opportunities to your existing patient database. And step 7, and I'm going to skip step 7 because I'm going to bring it in as a separate issue in a minute, is to make sure that you've got an incredibly robust end of treatment conversation. Again, I'll come back to that in a moment, in order that you can turn your patients into ambassadors, into advocates for your practice. It's back to marketing again, and we've got to have every step of your marketing plan back in place. So let's go to tip number 6. And that is to make sure that any treatment plan that you generate for any significant course of treatment contains the 10 essential steps that are going to make sure that your conversion rate on those treatment plans is as high as it possibly can be. And by the way, you ought to be targeting 2/3 conversion rate on any patients that come through the door other than GDP referrals. And if you've got GDP referral patients, your conversion rate should be as high as 85%. But in this climate, a treatment plan has to become a sales document, not just a printout from some practice management software. So let's look at these 10 steps in an essential treatment plan. Number 1, Mr. Patient, when you came through the door, this is what you told us your concerns were. Number 2, this is what you told us your wish list was realistically. Number 3, when we looked inside your mouth, this is what we saw. Number 4, based upon that, this is our diagnosis. Step 5, these are the benefits to you of our diagnosis. Step 6, this will be the financial investment that will be required to achieve that outcome. Step 7, this is how we can make that financial investment affordable. Step 8, here are some examples and testimonials from patients like you who have been through a similar treatment modality. Step 9, here's a profile of the team here at the practice who are going to be involved in delivering your care. And finally, step 10, this is the call to action. This is what you need to do next. And I was rehearsing even a couple of weeks ago with my clients how many of my practices now are using either PowerPoint or keynote presentations in order to put those treatment plans across to their patients in a format which makes it an attractive purchasing decision. So basically what I'm coming to here is that in these times, we've really got to make our treatment plans far more attractive documents than they may have been in the past. So let's go to step 5. God bless digital. And it is now possible to deliver to any new patient a complete audio-visual experience as they move through their patient journey with you. Now, again, I'm not going to read out what it says in each of these boxes, just review the fact that using digital visualization, whether it's a scan, whether it's an X-ray, whether it's a photograph, or whether it's software design, treatment planning now is a completely engaging audiovisual experience for the patient. And it's one also that they can take home with them in order to share with any other significant decision maker that they may have in their family. So let's now go to step 5. And this is an old favorite of mine. My goodness me, I've been waving a version of this document around for over 20 years. But I would ask you to ask yourself this evening a rhetorical question. And the question is, how many patients who are visiting your practice for any reason other than perhaps emergency pain relief, how many patients are being asked to either read and complete or read and comment on a smile wish list like this one, where they can give you feedback on how they feel about their current smile and what changes they would like to see if it were possible. It's such an old favorite, and yet it's so easy to forget when we're firefighting the effects of COVID, or when we're perhaps firefighting the effects of a perceived cost of living crisis. So it's time to get those smile wish lists back out again, and to make sure that every patient, even those that are attending for dental health reviews, is given the opportunity to read through this and comment upon it. Let's go for my top 3 now. Number 3, and I made brief reference to this when we were looking at the marketing mind map, is the re-emergence of the end of treatment protocol. Now, before COVID, I'd spent a number of years dining out on this mnemonic, Mr. Crest. During COVID, during the last 2 years, Mr. Crest has been in mothballs, but it's time for Mr. Crest to come back out again at the end of the delivery of any significant course of treatment. Now, remember that we've got a potential of 7 conversations here with a patient at the end of treatment. You would never have all 7 because it would be madness. You would perhaps pick a couple of these and say, okay, Chris Barrow's coming in for his final appointment tomorrow afternoon. We've agreed with him that there's going to be an end of treatment conversation. Which of these 2 are the 2 that we're going to be mentioning to him? M is for membership. Would you like to become a member of our dental plan and enjoy the benefits of that membership? R is for referral business card. Can I ask you to take with you 2 or 3 of our business cards and pass them on to any family, friends, or colleagues that you think would benefit from a visit to a practice like ours? C is for check-in. If you have a Facebook profile, we'd really appreciate it if you would check in at the practice today. R is for review. We would love to collect a review from you. And by the way, in a minute, I'll show you the very latest methodology for collecting Google reviews. E is for email address. Do we have a note of your email address? And can we add you to the mailing list for our monthly email patient newsletter? Excuse me 1 second. S is for selfie. Now, selfies have just had 2 years off. I think they're just beginning to come back into play again. We probably need to get the current COVID wave out of the way, but I think selfies will probably make a proper comeback in the next 2 or 3 months. We'd love to get a picture of you here in the surgery today, perhaps with the clinicians who have assisted with the delivery of your treatment plan. And finally, T is for testimonial. We would love to be able to collect a short video testimonial from you in which we can collect some feedback from you, 2 or 3 minute video that we could then use as part of our overall marketing collateral. So again, marketing is back, and the end of treatment review and the Mr. Crest list are back after 2 years off. 2 to go. Number 2, scan every patient, every visit. The intraoral scanner has revolutionized the patient experience. I have no affiliation with the manufacturer of any particular scanner. There are multiple scanners on the marketplace. You will make your own choice based on your clinical and technical preference. But the reality is that patients who are scanned have a better patient experience. Patients who are scanned will design treatment plans for themselves that you would never have the courage to design yourself. Patients who are scanned are more likely to convert and are more likely to proceed with treatment plans because they have had an all-inclusive, engaging, audio-visual experience. And by the way, and finally, patients who are scanned are more than likely going to tell their family, friends, and colleagues about that experience and about what an absolutely mind-blowing new experience it has been at the dentist. The intraoral scanner is the biggest game changer I've seen in my 25 years in dentistry. And it's also, I believe, the best business development tool that dentists have been given in my 25 years as well. So what's going to win my hit parade? Well, it's going to be remarkably simple, and that is the Google review. And I'm going to make a statement, and the statement is that, in my opinion, in the war between Facebook reviews and Google reviews, I believe that Google has now won. I believe that the Facebook review is the modern day equivalent of the Betamax video. People are writing Google reviews, people are reading Google reviews, and people are using Google reviews as an integral part of their customer research into whether you are the right practice for them. And the great news is that what you can now do is give a patient a simple card, on one side of which is a self-generated QR code. They can simply point their smartphone at that QR code. They don't need a Gmail address. They do need a Google account. But if they've got that Google account, they can point the smartphone at the code and they can write their Google review there and then. Isn't that fantastic? And it leads me to my number one favorite marketing statement, which is that all the money that you need for the rest of your career is in the pockets of the patients that you know and the people that they can introduce you to. And let's not forget Professor Robin Dunbar, who conveniently pointed out to us that every single one of us knows 150 people. And that's why a professor of anthropology and evolutionary psychology is writing books about social media marketing, because if you want to go and Google Dunbar's number, you will realize that you and I are connected digitally to approximately 150 people. That's the average number of digital friends that most of us have got worldwide. And so in actual fact, what it means is that in the modern world, we are no more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps away from everybody on the planet. Probably something that Will Smith wishes wasn't true, but it just shows you how news can travel further, faster than it has ever done before in the history of the world. So I've got a little homework assignment for you, and the homework is to make a mental note of the number of active adult patients that you have on your books at the moment. How many active adult patients do you have on your books at the moment? Multiply that number by 150. So for every 1,000 patients, you're 1 degree of separation from 150,000 other people. Do the math. And therefore realize that internal marketing is going to be far, far more effective than throwing money at advertising to talk to strangers. And so in our cost of living crisis, it has become more important than ever to engage your existing patients as your unpaid sales force. And if you've delivered a great customer service experience to them, and if you deliver great clinical care, they will be more than happy to become those ambassadors that we talked about earlier on. By the way, just in case you were wondering, there are currently 21,297,965 people over the age of 50 in this country. And they have something in common. And that is that they are the least affected demographic in a cost of living crisis. Simple. And so don't tell me that there isn't plenty of business around, because those 21,297,965 people are still going to be booking holidays. They're still going to be going out for meals at the weekend. They're still going to be going to listen to Genesis at the O2. They're still going to be going out to the theatres and restaurants and bars that they've always gone out to. They're still going to be out at music festivals this summer, listening to Tony Hadley performing live on stage. They're still going to be doing all the things that they're used to doing because they can afford it. And that's not a bad patient database for you to be aiming at. So the final point I'm going to make before I close for any questions is that it's also wise in a cost of living crisis to also choose your demographics in terms of some of the patients that you might be encouraging in through the door. And as a co-parent of 5 children who have all now left home, I can assure you that empty nest syndrome is a great place from which to be battling any increase in cost of living. And I feel genuinely sorry for those people with young families who are now going to be experiencing the pressures and strains of an increase in cost of living that I did when my family were much younger as well. So from a marketing point of view, I think it's a really good idea to think very carefully about those demographics within your patient database that are going to be less affected by what we're seeing on the media. So, in conclusion, and before I open up for any questions, a little bonus for you this evening. If you would like to download free of charge an ebook on mastering practice management, 4 steps to total confidence, all you need to do either now or when you get your copy slides is to just point your smartphone at that QR code, and you will be able immediately to download a copy of that free ebook. I can assure you that no salesman will call from either my company or Densura. You'll just get your ebook and you'll be off with it. You might want to share that with your practice manager going forward. So, what have I got to say in conclusion? I just want to say thank you for listening. For those of you that may not know, I publish a blog on the business of dentistry most weekdays, Monday through Friday, when I'm not on vacation or poorly, and the blog will be starting up again tomorrow morning. I do publish a monthly newsletter on the business of dentistry, and if you download the ebook, you will be subscribed to that newsletter as well. And of course, some of you will know that I'm just moving into my 5th year of broadcasting a regular monthly podcast with my very good friend Ashley Latter, during which we often interview key opinion leaders and influencers within dentistry. But if you've had a positive experience this evening, you yourself can also submit a Google review on Chris Barrow. And all that you need to do is to point your smartphone yet again at that QR code, and you will be able to write a review of this evening's presentation, good or bad, straight away. How risky is that? I do believe, Kevin, that is me done. And so I'm going to pop back here and I'm going to say that we have about 5 minutes if anybody on the call has any questions.
Well, just while we're waiting for that, Chris, I think that was an epic performance. And the fact that you've delivered it with that sore throat is stunning. So, you know, before anything else, just a huge thank you for that. And you know, I'm not a dentist, we insure dentists, but that was for me absolutely fascinating. So I hope that it gets a good reaction from everyone who's watching.
Thank you. I am stunned by the silence. But there we are. Lee, thank you for a question. How often would you send out the Smile wish list? Lee, it's a really great question. Clearly, two answers to that. First of all, it would form part of your new patient consultation with any new patient who was coming into the building for the first time. But can I also give you a little bit of feedback from experience, which is that don't amalgamate the Smile wish list into your medical history questionnaire because it just gets lost in the noise. Separate the two. So when a new patient comes in, give them a medical history questionnaire to complete first, which is all very left brain facts and figures, name, address, and telephone number. And then at a slightly later stage in the new patient consultation process, introduce the Smile wish list. Either give it to them to fill in or converse if you're a TCO with them. And that engages right brain feelings and it will allow them to give you that feedback. So that's point number one. Point number two, insofar as existing patients are concerned, I would give them a Smile wish list once a year. So perhaps even every second recall. Once a year, we just want to check up and see whether there are any changes to your answers to the Smile wish list. Hope that helps, Lee. Any questions from anybody else?
Hi, Pixie.
You're welcome. And there we go. Zara, who is best suited to managing this, the practice manager or the principal? I'm not quite sure whether you're referencing there the whole marketing of your practice there, Zara. Internal marketing, thank you. I would definitely give this to a non-clinician. Clinicians are too busy. They've got too much to do in the surgery and they haven't got the time and sometimes the skill to be able to deal with internal marketing. So it is an activity that should be carried out either by a practice manager or by a marketing manager or by a treatment coordinator or somebody combining all of those three roles. Chris Burton, a very good evening, mate. I thought you were away. What are you doing on this call? With the Google Review QR code, does the patient still have to have a Google account? I've just tried your code, CB, and it seems it's still the case. Yes, the patient does need a Google account, but they do not need a Gmail account to do it. Just a Google account will do, Chris. Any more questions? So is that somebody's got a ticking clock there? It sounds great.
Quite nice, really.
It is quite nice, yeah. Either that or it's about to go off. Any questions out there, you lovely people? There we go. Jonathan, a very good evening, mate. Please, may we have the free download QR code? Oh, the free download QR code again. And I'll come back to that. Yes, I'll put it back up, Jonathan, in a minute. And Viren, the forms are great. Is there a way of sending these digitally, as into patients, and they can return digitally? Viren, I'm no expert on this, but the answer has got to be a yes, because they are PDFs. And so there's one or two. Rachel Barrow, thank goodness, Jonathan has just downloaded there the link for the free download into the chat box, Jonathan. So I don't need to go back onto screen share again. And Lee Bonner there is commenting that they use DocuSign to actually take the documents that I've referenced here and turn them into digital documents that patients can complete and return. So thank you, Lee, for the feedback on that one. Jonathan, you got your link there. Anybody else that can help with anything? Zara again. Should fees be fixed or should each step be itemized as some treatments become more complex? should fees be fixed, or should each step be itemised as some treatments become more complex? Not entirely sure what that question means, Sarah, but I have always suggested that within a treatment plan, in the section on your financial investment, that you should itemise the treatment in the treatment plan itself. I'm hoping that kind of answers your question. Oh, such as a crown, but then you have to replace the filling. Itemise the treatment, Zara, is what I'm going to say in response to that. Remember remember the watchword in anything like this is complete and utter transparency. Number one, you've got to be transparent in your fee setting, and number two, you've got to give as much information to people as they possibly can, so that they actually understand the process that they're going through. Any more questions, please? Top of the hour, mate.
It is. I'm just thinking that was perfect timing.
Yeah.
So I think unless there are any more, we'll leave that there. As you said, we'll distribute copies of all of the slides to everyone who's participated. And thank you very much for the participation as well. As Chris says, that's really what makes it. And just before we go, just once more, Chris, I'm in awe. Absolutely superb. Thank you so much for your time on this. and for holding out. Don't give that voice a rest, but great to see you back.
Thank you. I've been so much looking forward to tonight, because I've just had a week feeling sorry for myself. So it's absolutely great to be back out there digitally. Thank you to all of those people who joined us tonight. Really appreciate it. And also there'll be some people that we know will watch the recording as well. If anybody's got any questions about any of this material, please don't hesitate to drop me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. For now, Kevin, thank you for the invitation.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everybody. Good night.